Hi, Glenn Davis, Scenic Designer and Scenic Manager for Willow Creek Church. 2011 Summit is approaching very quickly, and if you're like me, you're gearing up to create the scenic elements for the summit. Here, I have one of the prototype flats that you got information on as far as dimensions and so forth. But I wanted to talk a little bit about these curvatures. These curvatures are made out of the sonotubes that we sent you information on. These are 12-inch sonotubes. And one of the things that we, when I started making the first prototype that we ran into, I had no clue that the sonotubes were all in different diameters. Even though you purchase a sonotube, 12-inch sonotube, it varied anywhere from 11.5 to 13.5 inches. That's 2 inches difference. So when I started creating these curvatures onto the flat, some were wider, some were narrower. And in order to be able to make it more of a consistent line, we decided to create some slots in here for the curvatures. So these curvatures are conformed to the right dimension, and these curvatures just slide right in like that. Now, one of the things we don't know, we're considering whether you just use regular Elmer's glue or hot glue to put them in. These are pretty strong, but as I'm creating some of these flats that are 20-some feet tall, I'll probably put some kind of Elmer's glue in the slots so that make sure they're secure. The other thing too, we added Coroplast. This is a product that we used last year for the bow flats, if you remember. Just to add a little bit more dimension. It allows the light to pop on the Coroplast, and it just adds a translucent color, whatever your lights are. Now, when I started creating these, I decided to cut these lengthwise. And the first one I cut, I used it on a table saw, and nearly, the sonotube went flying in the air. So I decided, hey, I better create some kind of jig. Again, we're going to create quite a few of these. Could be anywhere from 75 to 100 of these sonotubes have to be cut. So I created this jig. This is 8 foot long. I'm able to put 2 sonotubes in. This is some scraps I had laying around. Got some 1x lumber on the sides. Created these corner blocks to keep this very stationary. Created a line here for my saw and a guide for my power saw to be able to slide along here and cut a straight line. Now, I created also some guides down here for the sonotube to rest upon as I'm cutting it. Now, the few that I cut, I didn't even put a clamp on it. These guides held this sonotube in place perfectly, but feel free, you could put a clamp here, and then once I cut that, I just happen to have some elevator bolts laying around. This is what an elevator bolt looks like. It's a flat bolt, and I put a wing nut on the other side. A couple rounds, I'm able to tighten that down and take my saw and make the next pass. So then we went from that jig to the next jig to be able to create these 12-inch widths. This is half of the sonotube, and I created this approximately 12.5 inches wide. Put a stop here, so then we slide this sonotube in and created a guide here for the handsaw. Now, I know some of you probably didn't have a table saw, don't have a bandsaw, all those kind of things. This is a very quick and dirty way of cutting these. Most of you are probably going to create 2 flats. That's probably 40, 50 of these to be cut. You could put 2 of them together. I just happen to have one in here. And I'm using a fine tooth saw blade. The fine tooth helps in cutting this cardboard. If you use a rough tooth saw blade, it tends to roughen up the cardboard, and then you have to sand it and kind of peel it. Now, the other thing, because I'm creating so many of them, I came up with this jig. This is, I'm using 12-inch casters as a guide. I slide the sonotube in, and I made my saw stationary at 12 inches, so I'm creating 12-inch widths. And my hope is, I've already cut a few of these, but my hope is to be able to cut 3 of these at a time. Again, we're creating 800 of these all at once. So there you have it. Hope this has been helpful. If you need more information, feel free to email me at gdavis@willowcreek.org. And there's also our production site, willowproduction.org.